Hello, I am Aviva reporting live in Jerusalem from room 552 for Israel 24/6 TV. Today is the 8th of July 2008. Welcome to this edition of More Than Commentary. Today a press release was sent to the foreign press here in Israel via the government press office. It concerns the deal for the return of abducted and missing soldiers, and the original communique was sent out via the Prime Minister's media advisor. The content of that official government statement is quite simple, and I quote, "The following is in response to journalists' questions regarding the abducted soldiers deal. We would like to clarify the following. Number one, a signing has been carried out with the UN envoy designed to start the implementation of the deal. The continued implementation of the deal is conditioned on several components regarding which no details will be given. Number two, the final report on missing navigator Arad has yet to be received. It will be received following the completion of the clarification process between the UN envoy and Hezbollah. Number three, the timetable for the implementation of the deal will begin after Israel receives the final report on Arad and in accordance with the government's decisions on the issue. After the report is received, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert will convene the cabinet to discuss the continued implementation of the deal." End quote. The listening world, of course, knows that the deal referred to in this government communique is the release of the recalcitrant, convicted Arab terrorist Samir Kuntar. In this deal, the government of the sovereign state of Israel agrees to release not only Kuntar, but several other convicted terrorists in exchange for the bodies of the two Israeli soldiers kidnapped in 2006, whose kidnapping triggered the Second Lebanon War. The deal also calls for substantive information concerning the status of downed Israel Air Force navigator Arad. As stated by the government of Israel, nothing in the deal will have any bearing on the exchange of Corporal Gilad Shalit, whom intelligence establishments here in Israel consider to be alive and held as a hostage by the Arab terrorist organization Hezbollah. In one of her recent editorials for the Jerusalem Post, Carolyn Glick delineates the factual account of the crimes committed by the Arab terrorist Kuntar. In that same editorial, Ms. Glick draws upon the pleas of the families for the release of their sons. It is not unusual that I would agree with most of what Carolyn Glick writes. It is usually her vicious diatribe against others who occupy seats she has never occupied which causes me to take a very wide berth concerning her statements. Nonetheless, in that particular column, she digressed from her usual style and made her points without too many insults of any of those she mentioned. Indeed, the government of Israel should be doing all that is strategically and tactically possible to retrieve the dead and the living who fell in service to the sovereign state of Israel. However, the one alarming anecdote which Ms. Glick gave was her statement that the media was working with the terrorists by, and I quote, "giving a microphone," end quote, to the families of the fallen Israeli soldiers. This is very disconcerting, though I am not surprised at her statement. As a journalist and writer and poetess, I recognize the right of individuals in a democratic nation guaranteed to state their opinion and to even be given access to a wider audience through means of a microphone held by a journalist. Caroline, would you really only give the people who agree with you access to a microphone? If that is the case, then you are a very mistaken woman indeed. While I oppose the use of the free press to incite hatred of nations and races, I would remind you, Caroline, that free and indiscriminate access to the media is one of the hallmarks of a democratic nation. What you proposed by default is that only those who agree with a certain point of view, your point of view, Caroline, should have access to the media. And that smacks of the infancy of totalitarianism. On the other hand, I must ask the public servants sitting in the Prime Minister's cabinet meeting for the logic in trading dead Israeli soldiers for living Arab terrorists. Surely Corporal Gilad Shalit deserves more skillful negotiators than ones who are willing to leave him held captive in order to trade the dead for the living. While the propaganda rags here would have the reader conclude that this has to do with freeing a wife burdened by the disappearance of her soldier spouse, nothing could be further from the truth. In the light of some of the writings of our sages, particularly Gemara Gittin, I must conclude that indeed this has very little to do with the agony of a wife left to wonder about the fate of her husband fallen in battle, and the question about when and if she can marry someone else. This idea of trading dead Israeli soldiers for live, unrepentant Arab terrorists who say that when freed they will take up arms against Jews again has to do with a government administration that counts on the voting public and its memory to be very, very short. How dare this government trade the dead for the living? Anyone and everyone who has any correct concept of the responsibility of a soldier and the family of a soldier to first protect country, then others, then self, should stand up with the parents of Corporal Shalit and say, no, absolutely not. Bring Corporal Shalit home with the dead, or leave every Arab terrorist in jail. The sovereign state of Israel and its courts showed extreme mercy by not sentencing Kuntar and those like him to death. How dare we show less mercy to our fallen soldiers than we have shown to an Arab terrorist? I call upon the parents and loved ones of every fallen Israeli soldier to join hands with the family of Gilad Shalit and tell this government that they dare not bring home the dead before they bring home the living. And that concludes this edition of More Than Commentary. I am Aviva Lee, reporting live in Jerusalem from room 552 for Israel 24/6 TV. May the Almighty guard, protect, and help Gilad Shalit. May the Almighty help the public servants administering the government of the sovereign state of Israel, and endow them with wisdom that they dare not lie unused. May the Almighty help this present inhabited world. Thank you, and shalom. Good night.